libertymom.org. That's Main Street Media, Utah. This is the Liberty Mom Show. I'm your host today, Dalane England, and Liberty Moms are the original Secretaries of Defense. We are the real defenders of the home front. And we're very happy to have you join us today, and we're very excited for our guest, who is not a Liberty Mom, but a Liberty Dad. His name is Michael Clara. Michael has an extensive background in law enforcement. He has been, though, in Utah for 30 years. He was a mayor in Texas some years ago before he moved to Utah. He's also served on the Salt Lake School Board, and he's also was with the UTA. So he has a very broad, extensive background and a wealth of knowledge. I have seen some of his videos. They're very interesting, and I wanted to have Michael come on today to talk about his experience with our elections. So we're not really talking directly about law enforcement or being a mayor. We're really going to zero in on Utah elections, which I personally believe that it actually, the same things that are happening in Utah are happening in a lot of other places as well. But Michael, thank you so much for being with us. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the work you've done on elections. I just want to say really quickly, elections are so important. We can't not have any of our freedoms without viable, honest, transparent elections. Elections are the gatekeeper to all of our other freedoms. So elections are a really important issue. And we're not making any accusations towards anyone, but they need to be transparent. And anyone who doesn't want to make it transparent, it's a problem because we need them to be transparent. So, Michael, how did you get involved in election integrity? With your background, it's not really about elections. So how did you first get involved?
But it's a good point. It's emerging of being on the school board in Salt Lake City. I got a quick lesson on and I wasn't even, trying to deal with partisan issues at the time. It was just representing the west side of Salt Lake City. And I got a quick education on the two, I call it the two forms of democracy. The one is the institution, the other one is the people. And therein was a clash between me and the superintendent and the other board members that I kept insisting I'm there to represent the people. And they kept trying to indoctrinate me that it's about the institution. And so anyways, I still have some trauma from that. So it's therapy for me when I see it happening in other places to look at it and recognize it. In this case, I fell down a rabbit hole, so to speak, and stuff. But I just wanted to say that's where I have the law enforcement background, and I was able to merge that with my experience in a elected offices and in a bureaucracy, and then it's a little easier for me than others to kind of sort this out and kind of see a pattern and a problem, and that's what happened here. So how I got involved is I'm a Republican, a fourth generation Republican. I think I've served in every, on every level here in the state of Utah, and the GOP on the state level, the county level. I'm always, other than when I was on the school board, when that's a nonpartisan elected office, I wasn't active in the party. But other than that, I've been, precinct chair, a ledge chair, a Senate chair. I was on the SEC. Just recently, I was on the executive board here in Salt Lake County. And I think I resigned last year because I was upset about the Malloy issue. And then I got back in as a delegate in March. My neighbors elected me. And because I live in a heavy Democrat area, we only have one delegate anyways. So that was nice of them to elect me after I just resigned the year before and stuff. So I go to the convention, in April here with the intention of voting. I don't think I voted for Governor Cox anyways. The last time around, I was supporting Greg Hughes as a delegate. And so this time I wasn't even thinking about the governor's race because it was, my neighbors elected me and said, we'll elect you as a state delegate, but you're going to vote for Phil Lyman, right? And I said, yeah, but because, it's kind of silly to go and throw your delegate vote away on somebody who gathers signatures. So I wasn't even
Right.
paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to take a second, Michael, so that people understand that, yeah, you don't need to vote for a signature gatherer, because when someone goes around the caucus convention system and spends money to buy their way onto the ballot, they don't need to get on the ballot through the convention system because they're already going around that. They're kind of saying, we don't really care what the delegates want. I don't need to meet them. I don't need to address them. I would rather just pay money and get on the ballot that way rather than really meeting face to face with the delegates. So you're saying that your precinct said, we want you to be our delegate, but we expect you to vote for someone at the caucus convention system who didn't get signatures.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And because in the past, for me, I have voted on the ballot. I have voted for people that have collected signatures because but I didn't vote for them at convention.
Right. Exactly. You end up voting for them on your ballot because they, in your opinion, are the best candidate that's there.
Right. Right.
But there isn't any point in voting. You don't need to vote for them. There's no real point because they're already going to be on the ballot. Okay. I wanted to make that clear to everyone. All right, go ahead.
The convention, and some people, mutual friends of mine from Southern Utah, introduced me to some delegates down there and said, hey, can you help them with the GRAMA request? And because I have somewhat of a reputation of understanding GRAMA and navigating that and being successful in obtaining documents, and just through experience of understanding the law.
Okay,
so
I'm sorry to interrupt you again. I want for the listeners and viewers to understand what a GRAMA request is. And a GRAMA request is a Utah Freedom of Information Act. It's Government Records Act, and it stands for something else, MA.
Government Records Management Act.
Management Act, thank you. So it's basically, as citizens, we have a right to GRAMA or to request these government records, because the government is for the people, by the people, of the people. We are supposed to have access to those records. But of course, we have to request them. And then we also have to pay what that costs, the labor for it costs them to gather that information and give it to us. A lot of times it's by email, so it doesn't really cost anything or hardly anything. But we do, as citizens, we pay for what the government, it costs them to gather that information, send it to us. So you've had experience with GRAMA requests with all your experience in both law enforcement, obviously on the school board, you probably would have, mayor. Yeah, so you would definitely have experience. So people went to you and said, will you do a GRAMA request?
Yeah, well, we help. In fact, I just saw the ledge report. They have to do an annual report, and their year is different. It goes from June to June, and I'm actually one of the top. I'm one of the top citizens, right under like Channel 13 News, of going to the appeals at the State Records Committee, but at any rate, so what they were trying to do at the time is they wanted to look at Chris Norton. I can't think of her first name right now, but Norton,
Christina, Kristen Norton of the school board in St. George.
Yeah, so it's Kristen Norton. She had turned in signatures, and what the delegates knew at the time. So this is April 27, 29. So what they knew is that so Kristen Norton turns in her signatures, but they were aware because the county clerk, I think his name's Sullivan, had told them a couple of weeks before the convention that Senator Ibsen, who also turned in signatures, that there were a number of fraudulent signatures on his on his signatures package, and to the point that there's going to be a criminal investigation going on and stuff. And so these delegates surmised that, how did Norton get hers through when they use the same company? How did Norton get hers through, but Ibsen didn't? And so then,
to be clear with people, so people go around, they pay a company to go around and gather signatures, get people to sign up and say, I support Kristen Norton, I support Senator Ibsen, and they put the signatures on there. And then because they found a lot of fraudulent signatures on Senator Ibsen's signature gathering packets, then people were kind of wondering, because if you're a signature gatherer, you get paid per signature. So it makes sense that you're going to take, and it's the same area, you're going to take both of those packets. So it makes sense that a lot of those signatures people would have signed both. So it's very reasonable for someone to question Kristen Norton's signatures, not questioning her at all, not questioning her integrity, but the company that she hired was under investigation. So of course it makes sense. You're thinking both signatures are probably going to be a lot of the same ones and could also be fraudulent.
Right. And I have to smile because what you just explained, I had no idea at the time. Like they had to explain that to me, because I never paid attention to signature gatherers or why they needed to do it. And like I think the flag issue, I signed it, but I didn't know all the issues behind it. And so anyway, so I said, okay, I get it. And then while we're still at convention, I'm looking up the law, and I said, look, there's an update to the law. That's actually, and it was like 63.2. It's weird that I even remember it. 305.5 is where the GRAMA law is at. And this specific one said that the signatures, a list of the signatures, because there's a distinction between the packets themselves and the signatures, the physical document, but because the clerks are also required to create a list that tells you whether a signature was rejected. But on that list, typically on a spreadsheet program, Excel or something like that, it has the name, the address, the precinct number, and it says whether the signature is rejected or if it is rejected, there's about 4 or 5 categories. So anyway, so they emailed me, and when I got home the next couple of days, they sent me the GRAMA requests that they had submitted that were denied. So I said, that doesn't even make sense to me. I said, I'm going to do one under my name and see what happens. Because the thing that we learned at the time, and you might have to elaborate on this a little more, is that, or I may not say it right, so you might need to clean it up for me or for everybody's listening, is that Ipsen's list was with the county in Washington County because the boundaries of his Senate district were within that county. So, right. So I do a GRAMA request to them, and I quote the law. I said, look, I didn't tell them I knew that you denied other people. I just said, here's the law on it. And then I did one for Norton also. So they tell me, no, Norton, you can't get from us because she's a multi-county candidate, and you have to get that from the lieutenant governor's office. And so I did a GRAMA request to the lieutenant governor's office. And the delegates down south already knew that, and they were denied by the governor's office too for the Norton list, who was on the state school board. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. If a senator or a House member is only in one county, then all the signatures have to come from that county, because you can't be in a different county and sign a signature petition for someone not in your county because you can't vote for them. So, right. So Senator Ipsen's, all of his signatures would have been in Washington County, but Kristen Norton, being a bigger area on the school board, then her signatures went into 2 counties. And so maybe more, I don't really know. I'm thinking 2 counties.
4 or 5 counties.
Okay, so yeah, so it went into several counties, and so she can gather signatures from all those counties. And that, of course, each county can't do that. So then it goes to the lieutenant governor to get them certified right there. That makes perfect sense. Right.
And then what I learned during that process is that the lieutenant governor is there's a term in the law for it. It's not elected officer. There's a term that eludes me right now. But so she's required. She receives all the, is in, I guess, the overseer of those, and they had contracted, which my understanding, there's some question now if it's legal or not, but they did a contract with Davis County to process those, all the signatures. And then later on, I'll get to that, but basically they ended up doing like 33 candidates statewide. Davis County processed signatures on behalf of the lieutenant governor. And so I did a GRAMA request to Davis County lieutenant governor. And anyways, I ended up getting them. I ended up getting the signature list, or I get the signature list for Norton. But then when the clerk, now let's go back down south to Washington County, and I'm asking for the Ipsen list, they initially said, you can come view it. We're not going to give you a list, but you can come view it. And I said, okay. So I make an appointment to go down there. And I said, I'll be in St. George next week. When's a good day? Then I get a letter from the county attorney. So the first letter was from the clerk. responding to my GRAMA request saying we're going to let you see them. Then I get a letter from the county attorney saying you're not seeing anything. Don't come down here because the Ipsen list is under a criminal investigation. So that was consistent with what the delegate initially said. But so I was done. I said, look, that's how GRAMA works. They don't have to give you, if it's under investigation and stuff. I said I can appeal it, and sometimes we can push back on that. So they wanted me to, so I did. And then I believe that we end up going through the primary. Norton loses anyway, so then I said, okay, I'm done. Right? You don't really need to do that. Need to go through that. And so I had a few.
So everyone knows Senator Ipsen did not get the signatures he needed because they were deemed fraudulent. But he went to convention and he won there. So then he didn't really need the signatures, but he did go to convention and win there. So in case people are wondering that, but
as did Norton had lost. So the people
Norton lost. Really, yeah, she lost big time at caucus convention. So,
Joanne Britton, I think, had won at convention and then won the primary. So then that's who the delegates, I think, were. I don't think they were on her campaign. They were just, looking at the election issue and concerned about the signature issue. So then I said, okay, we're done. I'm done, with this and stuff because it didn't take me a lot of time then, just to click and send it in. And then give them the information. Like when I got the Norton list, I just gave it to them. I didn't care what was on it and stuff. And I didn't want to know any more about signatures anyways. Well, then I get
to them. Are you talking about to the Phil Lyman campaign?
No, this is the delegates down south. Okay. That were involved in the state school board race.
Got it. Okay. So you gave it to the delegates.
Right. I gave it to them because that was all my involvement. I didn't really care about. I understood about the state school board race. I had been following some of the issues there over the last year, so I understood the dynamics of that, and that's why they had asked me too. They said, can you help with this? So I thought, okay, I've done my part, in helping. Then one of them calls me and says, this company that Ipsen used, it's the same company that Governor Cox used. And I said, yeah, that's true. I did find that in the process of doing this. They said, well, we think this might affect Governor Cox's list. I said, well, that's not my issue. I don't have it. I don't know. And I was busy with other things at the time. Well, then I get a call from Natalie Clausen the first or second week of June. And she tells me, and I knew who she was, and she introduces herself to me and says, hey, I understand that that you did a GRAMA request for Ipsen's list. And she told me what she was interested in, that it's the same, basically what this delegate had already told me the week before. So I send all the information to Natalie. And then I don't think at that point they had done a GRAMA request for Cox's list. And so, I walked her through it, and she submits one for Governor Cox for his signature list. Sure. I get one too, just for fun. And I get one back that just names, no addresses or anything. So then I appeal it. But in the meantime, because of the call from Natalie Clausen, I do appeal the Ipsen list. And I lay out the legal ramifications of it's okay, it's under investigation, but you have to tell us why it's going to affect your investigation. You can't just boilerplate it and say just because it's an investigation. And there's reporters that I had seen, and followed here in Utah that were successful in getting records of an investigation, like body cam footage and stuff.
Right. And, it's ongoing. They were able to get some information.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's what I was doing here. But then, in the meantime, then the Phil Lyman campaign was able to make an issue of that and say, wait, there's a criminal investigation going on. And then there was a part of the law that I wasn't even aware of. I think it was an attorney helping them that I knew people could join each other in a records appeal, because now what's happening is we're going to go to an appeal with the state records committee on the Ipsen list. And then there's another, it's called an intervener. And so they were able to file, with me agreeing to it as the original person, as the original petitioner, agreeing that they could be interveners. So they are now part of the records committee appeal. And I think the records committee even moved it up because because of Phil Lyman. I wasn't going to get a hearing until September or October, and then they moved it up to July. And that was covered by the media, and so we did the appeal for the Ibsen list, and the records committee ruled in favor of Washington County, saying that they didn't have to release it. And then I ended up appealing it in court, which was the next step, and we're in court right now with that appeal. But is there anything you want me to you want to clarify on that part chronologically?
Not at all. That sounds crystal clear. I think everyone can understand that. You're doing great. Okay. Very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Right. And then what at the time, it's important. I want to point out here, at least for me, I don't think I ever talked to, and I would talk to Natalie Clausen during this time. And I just want to clarify, because I made a series of videos on this, and I'll point them out as we get to them chronologically. But I wasn't, I'm a moderate Republican. And so I really, even for me, I was still going to vote for Phil Lyman. It was more of because I didn't want to vote for Cox. And I really didn't care about, Phil Lyman's policies or anything. It was just, I had some concerns about Governor Cox. So that's where my vote lay. But I got to know Natalie Clausen during this process, because we would exchange information. And then I started getting suspicious then. First of all, I should say the reason I laid that down, what I just said, because I wanted to say I didn't believe at the time that this had anything to do with Cox signatures. And so I was being very polite and respectful to Natalie and just helping her with the process. But in the back of my mind, I was saying I think I did say she's crazy, but I'm going to help her, with this process, because there's no way they're doing anything with signatures. I mean, how hard is that? You turn them in and stuff and everything, and you're on the ballot, and there's a criminal investigation. And again, but during this process, I'm learning about signatures, and then I'm resisting having to read the law and understand it better. But each time, I do a GRAMA request or they get denied, or then I start hearing from other people, then I'm like, something is going on here. I'm not saying that there's something nefarious is going on. And it's kind of like, back in the day when I was a police officer out on the street, I could tell when somebody's going to start running. And I was in Texas. So when a cowboy takes off his cowboy hat, and it's like, okay, he's going to fight, so, there's these cues you pick up on. Well, I've been around enough and from a bureaucratic standpoint to recognize, and I learned this from the corruption that I saw firsthand at the school district, then I was able to pick out pretty quickly something is wrong here, and it's we better keep looking into this. And Natalie Clausen and Phil Lyman, were convinced. I wasn't as convinced, but I, my suspicions kept me on the trail, if you will. So then we do the Ibsen list. We do that. The next thing for me, I think that I got involved in was, as we're waiting for the Ibsen list, the thing that I wanted to point out here, I'm thinking, because let's go over numbers real quick. Under the law, Governor Cox is required to turn in 28,000 signatures, and he had turned in a total. And in this process, so Natalie does find out how many, because we didn't have any numbers. We were able to get the list at one point, but I think it was June 19th. She found out from Ryan Cowley at the Lieutenant Governor's office what Cox's numbers were. And so we found out that it was like, I think it was like 32,475 total he turned in. 4,000 and something of those were rejected, and we knew the reasons why they were rejected. It's almost like right under 5,000, so about 4,000. And then he was able to meet the threshold by 28,006, because under the law, as they're verifying signatures, then they stop once he meets the threshold. So he had 520, I think 526 unreviewed signatures, spares, if you will. So we have those numbers. Phil Lyman is still saying publicly there's a problem here. That there's an issue here. I'm thinking at the time we're going to find 30 signatures. That are, if we get that Ipsen list, and we're going to find that, because the idea of getting the Ipsen list for Phil's people and for Natalie was that you could that there were signatures on Cox's list that were verified as good, but they were not good in Washington County, the same people. And the reason was
some disparate
right
between those two, because if they were thrown out in Washington County, they should have been thrown out by Davis County, or the lieutenant governor. If they're bad signatures, they should be thrown out no matter which county approves them.
Right. And all they had were suspicions at the time, and I agreed with them. That yeah, let's look at them, because then right around that time, McKenzie, who's the clerk in Davis County, he makes a statement. So understand, we get these numbers like June 19th, and by the way, I'm like 60 years old. I don't remember anything. I don't remember where I parked my vehicle, but it's odd that I'm remembering these numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but this is crazy because I've done this too long, or I'm too deep in this. But so on June 21st, Brian McKenzie, who's a clerk in Davis County, issues a statement, and he says, look, I affirm that these signatures are good, that we verified them, we did them appropriately, we followed the law. And then he gives us some really interesting stats. He said we did something like 30 something candidates that we processed the signatures, and it ended up being like 300,000 signatures that his people looked at. That's extraordinary. And that they were able to process. And so then I thought, oh, that makes sense now. You got a county clerk in Washington County. They only had one candidate that turned in six.
Yeah.
So they could go there and they could review them. And so the quality, now I understood there could be a quality issue here.
Absolutely. Because doing, I think he only needed to turn in 2,000 signatures, didn't he?
Yeah, correct.
Well, doing 2,000 signatures, that's doable. Doing 300,000 signatures in a very short period of time, in a short window. And I know they had to just hire some, I don't want to sound disparaging to teenagers, but some young people who don't really have any experience or really.
Well, let me correct you on that, actually.
Oh, please do.
I did a GRAMA. I'll get to that at one point, but I did a GRAMA request, and they were temporary workers, temporary people, but they've done it before. I could just find them on Facebook once I got the names of who I was asking for, who had been certified to taking the courses for signatures, and I'll get to that. But just so you know, these are like school counselors and people that were educated. I've heard this before too, that it was temp workers and stuff, but a lot of them were repeat people that knew what they were doing, and then they were trained and stuff. But so that June. So now we're about June 21st. That starts making sense to me that there's probably is a quality issue going on here. And then for me, the next thing that comes up is that they're going to do an audit, and that a legislative audit. That we're now like probably June, July, August now. That the legislative auditor is going to get involved, and that now the state auditor John Dougal is going to get involved and stuff. And right around that time in August, I get contacted by some people, and they said, "Hey," because I had posted, I think, a couple of YouTube videos about the hearing, and we were in the front page of if it was printed today, the Salt Lake Tribune and the Deseret News about the hearing on July 18th with the State Records Committee. So some people reached out to me in probably first week of August and said, "Hey, we were contacted by an investigator with the Attorney General's office, and these people, they lived in Vineyard in Utah County, and they said that the investigator showed them the packet, the signature list, and showed them their name and the names of their neighbors on there, and that asked them, 'Did you sign this?' They said, 'Absolutely not,' because in fact the date we were with our neighbors, we were out of town, so it wasn't us." And they were able to, the investigator thumbed through all of, and their whole neighborhood was on there. But nobody had ever contacted them. And they said you could tell that just, you didn't, you could tell that it was the same person, same ink color and stuff that had signed it. And they said that it was Cox's signature list. So they even had a business card that was given to a number of them with the case number on it. So I do a records request I get a copy of the business card, and I do a records request with the Attorney General's office for that list, and I get a response back that they have no records responsive to my request. So I appeal it.
Really?
You have to have records because under state law, they're for a police report, which they are law enforcement, you do have to disclose a contact report and disclose that there's an issue, something going on here, or the title of it. And I said, well, there's a case number there and everything. And so I appeal it. And then Daniel Burton, who's involved in party issues and was the attorney, responded to me on my records appeal. He said that they had no record, that they had nothing to give me, that there was no investigation going on with the Cox signature list. So then I appealed it to the State Records Committee, and they rejected my appeal. I mean, when I say they rejected it, they wouldn't even schedule it for a hearing, which is unusual. I've been to them before in the same circumstances, say the governmental agency saying they don't have the record. I believe they do have the record, and they would schedule an appeal hearing. And then in those cases, one of them was state school board, state board of education. They ruled in my favor a couple of times and said, yeah, you do. We believe him. You do. You need to give him the records. And they did. And so it was odd that they would just reject me. Like there's a provision in their rules that the chair and the executive secretary can say we're not going to schedule it because you don't have any preponderance of evidence that they have the record. And it's like, what are you talking? I have a business card with the investigator's name and a case number. So to me, that was very unusual and not normal. So I think I'm looking the date up here. So on August 17th, I posted a YouTube video titled Spencer Cox Signature List Cover Up. And as a result of this, because I was stunned that I couldn't even get scheduled for a hearing. And so now, I do this video and it attracts, people watch it. And I think the subtitle of it was Corruption in Utah Governor's Election. Governor Spencer Cox and cronies are in overdrive to bury the truth. And so now that's out there, and I get more people contacting me, and I end up having to go to court to file that appeal in court. But that was very unusual that it happened that way. Then fast forward to, and I think at this point I started doing some GRAMA requests to Davis County, and so I find out that number one, that Davis County, well, no, I haven't done it yet because what happens is September 3rd is when John Dougal, the state auditor, his audit comes out. And basically what he says is we did a limited audit. We looked at the signatures, and he says there's, it looks like statistically Governor Cox didn't have the right amount, didn't have enough signatures because, and they did this, I can't remember the formula they used, but it's a formula that's consistent with auditors, and they only pulled like 300 signatures out of the 28,000 that were verified. They pulled 300, and because of the numbers they found wrong, they could extrapolate that they think about 300 that were verified should not have been. And it's like, wow, that's way over the 30 that I thought we were going to find. And then, but they have this narrative then that goes on that says, well, yeah, he ended up getting signatures that were verified that shouldn't have been, but that's okay because he had spares and he had some in reserve. Well, Dougal says, so we go and look at his reserves. So he says the 520 something that he had, he said, we looked at each one of those. We don't look at those statistically. we looked at each of those, and he says, so that gives him, and they were able to verify 391 of those were good out of the 520 something. And so he says, you see, so he ends up being like 80, close to 80, that I think that he was still above the number, right? Or still above the threshold. So as a result of that, because of some of the ways that he says that John Dougal explains in there about methodology and how they came to this conclusion. So I started doing GRAMA requests with Davis County. And I find out, number one, the contract so I find out that, number one, that when they get Cox's signatures on February 20th, that by March 15th is when the clerks in the Davis County have verified or completed his process, have verified or rejected the signatures and have sorted them where they need to be. And because of the GRAMA request I did, I find out that the lieutenant governor's office and the clerk's office don't even sign a contract till 2 days after they are done with Cox's signatures, which I don't know why that is. And I have an email that I got through GRAMA where McKinsey sends the contract to the lieutenant governor's office, says, hey, we never did get a signature. Can you get it to us? And so they get it on March 19th. So I think there remains to be seen why that if the clerk is acting under the authority of the lieutenant governor, and the only way that authority is transferred over is through, they call it an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and that's in state law. And by the way, it's the same way that local municipalities enter into a contract with the county clerk to do their elections. And here you have this one going on, but it happens for whatever reason 2 days after they completed Cox's signature. So maybe one of your listeners or somebody who hears this, gives us some insight as to why that happened. The other thing I did is I did a GRAMA request for the certification of all the clerks in there, and I get 36 back, and none of them are certified. They were required to take 2 courses, and they didn't. Some of them, for whatever reason, took one of the courses. The other ones took the other course. And so I don't know why that is, but so the way I say it now is that going back on Governor Cox's verification process is that you had uncertified clerks that the clerk didn't even have a contract to be doing this process. So that's one of the odd things in there. And then one of the more, I'm going to fast forward now to October. Just a couple of weeks ago, on October 15th, another audit came out by the legislative auditors. And when they look at the numbers, they first of all, they just say, look, we're not talking about the process to get on the ballot or the signatures, but we did run the numbers and stuff, and they come up with as high as 1,000 of Cox's signatures are probably should not have been verified. And then they do some averages, and they say, okay, it's like 526. We're going to say didn't make it through and stuff. And he's short by their numbers. When you calculate everything, he didn't meet the threshold, which may be the quality of the, you had clerks that were not certified, didn't take the proper training. That might be why they missed all that and stuff. But one of the more interesting things that again, I just discovered this a week ago, and I did a video on it. By the way, these videos that I've done, I've ended up having to do updates. And the last update I've done was update number 6, and they're on YouTube under Michael Clara. And update number 6 is the one on the legislative audit. And I only did one portion of it. And what they disclosed in there, which I think is something that people should be concerned about, is that it looks like when the clerk. So let me talk about the process that should be happening, and this is confirmed. This is in state law on the June 21st affirmation one-page statement that McKinsey put out to the press, and it was covered in the media. He says that the signature packets are delivered directly to us here in the county office. We get those and we process those, and there's two workers that process them, and they look at them, and each signature is accounted for. It's either accepted or it's rejected, and then so fine. So he says, and the reason why it was rejected is noted, and that's the law. That's how it should be. And then, like I said,
I just want to let people know there is also a chance to cure, where they're saying it doesn't look like this is valid, but where they contact the signature person with their signature and say, did you sign this? So they do that as well. So they give people a chance to say, yeah, that is my valid signature.
But I don't know. But you see, that's a good point. There's a whole different process for ballot signatures.
Yes.
And on a ballot signature, that happens. In this case, I don't think
in this case, they don't. They just say yes or no.
Yeah, they don't need to, because they can just reject them and go to the next. And I think maybe somebody like Ibsen, they might have done that because he didn't have any more. And I don't know at what point. Well, they got him early enough. They told him he needed more, and I don't think he wanted to do it, get more. I don't think he cared. I think he kind of knew that he would make
it. Do it in convention. Yeah.
And he was right. And so as far as I know, they don't do the curing on these petitions. I haven't seen anything to that effect.
So they just check out if they don't trust that it's right. They just check it.
Yeah, and they note it because and McKinsey told us that he noted it. However, in this legislative auditor's audit on the signature verification process, they say that as the clerks in Davis County were starting to look at signatures, that they pulled complete packets that they felt were forged signatures. And so they just pulled them. They didn't count them anymore. And then they sent them back to the lieutenant governor's office, which to me is clearly a conflict of interest because they're the candidate. Why would you send them back their packets? You should have never done that.
I so agree. And it's a problem with having on our ballot, having the person over elections is on the ballot running to be to be the lieutenant governor, but they're over elections, and that we've got to fix that. But that's another subject. That's a rabbit hole I definitely want to go down, but we'll see if we have time today.
And there was a fix in place. The Lieutenant Governor Henderson in February, March, the beginning of March 5th, I think, had appointed Greg Bell to be that person. So that if anything that, and she says anything that has to do, I think they even used the word sequester, that she's sequestering herself from anything to do with her race, and that Greg Bell would deal with those issues. That didn't happen. I don't even know if that ever happened. Maybe once.
And I feel like I have an obligation to just mention that Greg Bell was the lieutenant governor before, under the same administration he was a lieutenant governor under Herbert. And so I wouldn't really consider, I like Greg Bell. I'm not like making any, whether I like him or not, I'm not saying there's anything nefarious, but yeah, he's been missing in action completely. Right. And it just seems like if you're going to point somebody to show that everything's fair and transparent, you wouldn't really get your really good friend who's been on your team. Right. You know what I mean? It just seems like you might find somebody a little bit more third party, hands off your election.
You can pretend to be impartial and send it to him, And in this case, they didn't even do that. They just and what the audit says is that some of those, so that the county clerk pulls those packets, sends them back to the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor then decided whether those were going to go to the attorney general or not, and that some did go to the attorney general, but it's silent on what happened to the ones that didn't. Did you send them to McKinsey? And the ones that McKinsey sent to the lieutenant governor, did they actually send the same ones back, that were turned into him? And so to me, that's just huge because number one, it's a violation, in my opinion, of state law. Number two, it shows that McKinsey lied to us when he affirmed on June 21st that this is how things were happening. And if you read his statement at the time or accepted it, then that gave you some assurance at the time that there was integrity in the system. This audit tells us that there's not, because then it goes on to say that at one point the auditors in the legislative auditor's office couldn't find some packets, and they had to ask the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor finds them in her office. But they say that we don't know why they were separated or why they weren't with the others. And it's like, this is bizarre.
That is bizarre. Good word for it.
Right. And so
you need an explanation. There must be some accountability, because we have a process so that it's transparent, and we all know it's fair and honest. We need to have a process that everyone can see.
Well, let's go back to what you said earlier about signatures on the ballot. What if these were ballots? You couldn't treat ballots this way.
No.
If you're the clerk in charge of the ballots, you don't send them to the lieutenant governor's office. You document what's going on and stuff. So I think to maintain integrity in this, the county clerk, I wouldn't have been surprised if he sent them to the attorney general's office or to his district attorney. That makes sense. But why send them to the lieutenant governor, who's a candidate, and it was signatures. It was right.
Yeah.
And so to me,
but the signatures are in essence a form of a ballot, because you're basically saying, I'm signing that I want this person to run and I'm supporting them. That's what you're signing.
Right.
So it's a form. It's not a final ballot, but it's a form of it's a pre-ballot is what it is. It's a pre-ballot. Right.
But what to me, what makes this more insidious is that these aren't even documented anywhere. So for example, let's go back to Washington County. As they saw signatures that they thought were forged, they document those into a category of not matching. And I think there was like 100 and something that Ibsen ends up having in his category of not matching. So after they process all his signatures, and you could look at the list and say, we never got the list, right? But they gave us the number, the breakdown. You could look at them and say, okay, well, these were not matching. These were valid and stuff. And then during the hearing, the appeals hearing, one of the state records committee members asked the district attorney from Washington County, well, how many signatures are we talking about that you're investigating? He says, well, I don't want to say. And he actually would have been okay to just say, I can't tell you. And nobody could have done anything. But he told us. He said there were about maybe up to 60 that he thinks were forged. And stuff. Right. So, but we could go put our finger on the category and say, okay, he thinks there's 60. We know that it's in the category of not matching of the 100 and something that Ibsen had. We can't do that here. We don't know what the numbers are, because the auditor is pretty explicit that they pulled the packets and did not count them. And then later on, the auditor says, here's the numbers that we have for Governor Cox. And we know that, he had this many stuff. And then there's a footnote that says, but we really don't know, because we're not including the numbers that were sent to the lieutenant governor's office or the ones that were sent to the attorney general. And the other thing they do reveal to us in this audit is that out of the 520 something that he had as unreviewed, John Dougal reviewed them and did tell us that, he had told us there was 391 that were correct.
So that's how we found out the ones that were valid, and he did.
Unreviewed.
Our state auditor John Dougal did that himself.
Right. And so
he's an auditor, so that makes sense.
He looked at every single one as opposed to statistically. However, these auditors and the state legislative auditors tell us that Cox only has 491 unreviewed. They're short 100. But then they footnote that later and tell us that out of those unreviewed ones, 100 of those are with the attorney general. And so at least we know that much, that the unreviewed are with it. But there's a number of packets that are unaccounted for. And to me, so I've come full circle on this, is that I want to be done and say, okay, I know what the cover up is about. I don't know the motives, but I can with assurance say, and I pointed it out in that update number 6 on the YouTube video for the cover up series that I created, is that the legislative auditors told us what it's about, that there were packets that are unaccounted for, and hopefully somebody else looks into that. I think in my update number 6, I called on people that live in Davis County and said, you should, put this in front of your district attorney, Troy, what's his name? Troy Rawlings. Is that who
Yes,
the DA is?
yes.
That someone needs to talk to him and see if there's a violation of law here. Because I think that, and again, the other thing we find out is the Attorney General's office is indeed doing an investigation that I'm in court right now with them appealing because they denied that they were. So why would they do that? Why would they deny? You see, and I think at every step they kept thinking that I was going to go away, but I got I've had to put aside a lot of things in my personal life to follow this, but I'm not getting paid for this. I don't have Phil Lyman or Natalie Clausen in my ear saying, "Oh, Michael, keep doing it, keep doing it." I've done this on my own, but I've gotten my, what's the word I want to use? My passion to follow through with this from watching Phil Lyman and Natalie Clausen. And frankly, I feel bad for them that the name calling and the gaslighting that they get. And I think I did on update number 3, I think. Let's see. I have to look. On update number 5, I did a response to the lieutenant governor where she's now going around talking about election integrity, did a thing at the Hinckley Institute, did one last week at the Sutherland Institute, or the Sutherland Institute, saying that, talking about election deniers, and that if you question elections and stuff, you're a bad person and this kind of stuff. And it's crazy.
Hat.
Right. And she,
that's so interesting that she's calling out. And that is kind of a typical thing in defense mechanism, is to turn it onto the people who are investigating instead of just sharing, instead of just proving, look, here's the evidence. You don't have to worry. Let's be transparent. Thank you for caring. It's like, oh, you're just election deniers. Call names. It's a tactic.
And you can't put me in that category because I have the evidence. I lay it out. I'll send it to anybody who asks for it and stuff. And I'm not, connected to Phil Lyman, although I support him. I've gotten to know him, and especially Natalie Clausen, and I have a lot of respect for her and stuff, to the point that now personally, I just feel bad for them that they're having to take, some of the lashes and accusations that I think are unfounded. And the true, person here that's questionable actions is Brian McKenzie at Davis County and the lieutenant governor herself.
Very well said. Yeah. Because you know what? If there's transparency, then people aren't suspicious. People aren't asking as many questions when you're just transparent and people can see. And we deserve that. Our system is set up that way. We deserve to know what our government is doing, especially in an election.
Right.
Well, you have laid it out very well, Michael. I have to say you've done an excellent job laying it out. And it is really fascinating that you, as a regular citizen, just felt compelled, we need to go get these. And so I think that's an important thing for people to know. This is not coming from anyone's campaign at all, that you're just like seeking to find the truth.
Right. Let me say one thing.
Please
do. Whiteboard behind me, that's a timeline of each row is a month. It starts in January. And I had to create that at one point because I was getting confused on what happened. But I had to do that because then I could start seeing the actions of the lieutenant governor and what stuff would surface. And I'm still getting GRAMA requests, responses to them, where I'm getting emails where I'm able to kind of make more of a picture as to what they were doing and why. And the bottom line is, I don't think they ever anticipated that people would look into this the way they have. And, we've never had a candidate like Phil Lyman. People, I think, uninformed people call him a sore loser. But if you understand, we spent an hour sharing one aspect of this. They have other issues that I don't even listen to. And when somebody calls it, what do you I say, I don't have the bandwidth for it. I want to stay focused on this. So I don't even understand the other issues that Phil Lyman and his campaign bring up. But I can tell you that this one is legitimate. and so I can extrapolate that the other ones must be just as legitimate also.
Wow, that is so important. Thank you so much, Michael. You've been just a wealth of information. And yeah, I think you're very wise because you're doing so much that you really do a good job, and very wise to keep it documented and keep records of what happened when. Because, well, you're a former police officer, so
Right.
you're used to doing investigations.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time to be on with us today and for sharing this really vital information. If we don't care about our elections, we will not have freedom. Freedom is not free. It's fragile and it's vital. I do not want to live anywhere but a free country. But we have been given this amazing country by the sacrifice of so many who did much more, who sacrificed their reputations, who gave up their treasures, their wealth, everything they had worked for, the finances and the treasures. And some even gave up their very lives, but they definitely gave their lives in service, in working, in sacrificing, so we could have this amazing opportunity to have freedom and to be engaged in our own government. It is nothing like it in the world, where, especially at the time, there's other countries now that are more like it, but there's nothing like America, where we really are our own representatives, where we are duly elected, where we should be duly elected. And we don't believe in having governments come down and take care of us or manage us or govern over us. We are self-governing. We're a self-governing country. So, and we can't govern, we can't elect our own representatives without the election system, and it must be transparent. So I think you've done a great job not making any direct accusations to people, but the system has failed us. We have a great system, but people were not using the system correctly. So I shouldn't say the system failed us. People not using the system correctly has totally failed us. And it is time to stand up. If you care about freedom or liberty, please get educated so you can get involved. Please contact your county clerk, see what they have to say, find out, share this information with them. Definitely call the governor's office, 801-538-1000. Call them and tell them you're very concerned about our elections. You're concerned about what has happened. You would like to see some transparency. We would like to hear from the governor what he plans to do about the independent legislative audit. It very much shows, in my opinion, it does show that Governor Cox, no fault of his own, no nefariousness on his part, hired a company. They fell short. He did not get the signatures. What is the remedy here? If you don't qualify, if we believe in the rule of law, you don't qualify, then you don't qualify. Do we believe in the rule of law? As Republicans, as Americans, do we believe that if you fall short and you don't qualify, then should you still be on the ballot? I think that's really the question. If you don't meet the qualifications, should your votes be counted? Because in fairness, he is already on the ballot, but should he still be on the ballot, and should the votes count when did it qualify to be on the ballot? So any last minute thoughts, Michael?
Oh, no, just that I do blame, I think that the fault lies beyond the company. The company could do whatever they wanted, but we have a county clerk and a lieutenant governors who should have, who were the checks and balances to this, and they failed. And they need to be held accountable for their actions as elected officials.
Very well said. I will not add to that. That is perfect. And I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And please remember that you are the guardians of your liberty. Thank you. Have a beautiful